Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's three prakim: Rambam, Hilchos, Psulei, Hamukudashim, prakim Beis, Gimel, and Dalet. Starting with Pedig Beis. Pedig Beis is all about Psulei, Hamukudashim, in relation to Dam. We're going to learn about different bloods, kosher, not kosher, if they get mixed together. Pedig Beis has 26 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Says that Rambam kol hadomim hanitonin al mizbeach hachitza, in all the bloods that have to be applied on the outer altar. Even though normally you have a minimal of 2, and by a chatos you have 4 blood applications from one carbon. By all of them, im nasan matana achas bavad, if there was only 1 blood application, then kiper, then the carbon achieved its atonement. The person got his or her atonement. And afilu b'chatos, unlike the oila, the shlamim, the asham, shtaim, shem, arba. Like we mentioned, chatos, aside of it being unique, that its blood applications from an animal is above the chuta sikra, but more than that, it lachatchila should be applied to all of the 4 karanas. 1 is enough. And sha'ar ha'arba, the other from the 4, which should be put, but they are only lemitzvah. Shenamar, as it says in Parshas Re'ei, v'dam zivachecha, yishafech al mizbach Hashem Elokecha. In the singular, you shall pour, meaning shfichas adam al mizbeach. And if that happened, that's the ikar. Halacha beis. Chol hanitonim b'srika. The bloods that have to be thrown on the mizbeach, if shenasanan b'shvicha, if it was poured, throwing it is when the coin stands a little bit away. You know, when you put the shtaim shein arba, the advantage of throwing it is that when you throw it with strength and it gets actually the corner, then some of the blood will go on one side and some of the blood on the other side, which is what we want. Pouring it is much more gentle. Also, yatz, even though it was not done ideally, as same pasuk, the dam zivachecha yishafech. Even if it was only poured, keep it. Halachim. Kol hadonim hanitonim al mizbach hapnimi. That is only when it comes to the bloods that have to be applied on the outer altar. But all of the korbanos whose blood applications are inside, you know, on Yom Kippur, in the Holy of Holies and in the Holy, other korbanos, you know, par helam davar shal tzibur, doesn't go into the Holy of Holies. But you have the applications on the curtain and also on the mizbeach. There, im chasar achas mihen, if even one of the blood applications were missing, loy kipe. Elokulam hen ikar kapara. Shahrei akosov hikbed alaminyan shenemar sheva pa'amim. That's the 7 times like on the paroiches. So that's already one huge difference. Halacha dalet. Chato shenasan mimenu matana achas umeisu haba olim. Now we're going to learn, God willing, today in the 4th chapter of Psulei HaMukudashim, and our 3rd chapter of today, the halacha l'Moshe Misinai is regarding chatois, that in certain scenarios, the animals designated for the chatas have to be left to die. And one of them will be if the owner passed away prior to the animal being offered, the chatas being offered. So let's say by a oila, so the children will bring it. But by a chatas, the animal is left to die. Now, if one blood application was put on the mizbech and then umeisu haba olim, so as we mentioned, the person already got their atonement. So it's not shot that Misa is machaper, which is the whole issue. So therefore the chatos is not needed, and therefore it's left to die. No. The kapara came before death. Here's the word. Even though the Baalim passed away, Yashlim Arba Hamatonis La'achar Misa Yavaldik. No, it does not have the din of a chatos shemesu be'oleh, and it makes total sense based on the rule that one application is enough, and that happened when the owner was alive. And now it's night, and dam may not be offered at night. We don't say, since one was done by day, therefore already apply the other 4 at night, or meaning after shkia. Lo yitain hasholosh balayla. And the reason for that is because dam becomes puzzle with shkia sacham. So the blood is invalid. Halacha vav. Now, this whole concept, if you remember, of halo as chutz, for which your chayiv kada is bringing a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash. So you received the dam, and you put one application on the outer altar, and now you put the others outside of the Beis Hamikdash. You would think you didn't violate anything. You can make the argument because you already fulfilled your obligation. So what you're doing now is not needed. So it's nothing. No, that's not true. You will be chayiv kares. You are ma'ila b'chutz. It's takedat le'ikuva, but it's a mitzvah. And since this mitzvah has to be done inside, doing it b'chutz is going to be machayiv kares. Halacha zay. Hoya mazer. We're speaking about achatos ha'oif. We're speaking about chatois ha'pnimiyos. And this person sprinkled it on the mizbeach, the nikta ayodei shel mazav, and the one who was doing the avodah, the kohen, became a balmum. For example, his hand got cut off. Koydem sheyagi adam la'avad hamizbeach. Here we say loy also loy hazo Allah eches shina matan koronis bachatos. Now, if the order was changed, bein b'chatois anasis bifnim. If you remember, by both karbanos, you have to do outer altar lemitzvah 4 applications. In the chatois hanasis bifnim, you're mechuyev liikuva the 4 applications, aside of the 7 on the paroiches. Now, which corner do you apply the dam first? If you remember, since the chatois of an animal, you go up the ramp. You're going up the ramp. You turn to the right. The first corner that the dam is applied is Droimis Mizrachis. Droimis in the letter Ches on this picture. Then Mizrachis Tzefainis. You understand? And you make that full circle. So if you went out of the altar by Achatos, both Bifnim and Bachutz Pasal, Aval B'Shar Kachim, even though we also had the Shtayim Shehin Arba, where you should apply the Damim, but if you went out of the order, then yes, Kshedim. And the commentators are struggling to know why is there a difference. No, it's why is it that by the Shara Kachim it's Kash? Halacha tes. Nosan Adam Nenakerim Lefnim. Bein Bechatas, Bein Bishar Kachim. Now the Dam Chatas, if you remember, the Koronos, actually, the Koronos refer to the horns that are on top of the Mizbeach. Every Keren was like a cube of an Amma by an Amma by an Amma. But let's only speak about length and width. It went on each direction a full Amma. Now you make a invisible line, taking the Amma of the corner, and you go down all the way up until the Chut HaSikra. And that is where the dam of the Chata should be applied. Like we mentioned, within the Amma of either side from the corner. Now, if a person put it beyond the Amma, that's not called applied on the Karen. Halacha Yud. Dam shemitzvasi l'tenoisa l'mayla. All the bloods that have to be put above, let's say the animal chatos, if they were put under the chut hasikra, or if shemitzvasi l'mato, almost all the karbanis are in oila. The dam has to be under the chut hasikra if they were applied above the chut hasikra, or shemitzvasi l'itna b'fnei ha'echel if the dam needed to be applied inside the hechel and it was put on the mizbeach hachitzin. Or in the opposite, or dam shenos and damaniton bachutz, bloods that have to be put on the outer altar were left outside, but they would not put on the altar; they would put on the ram, ala kevesh. It was put on the mizbeach, but if you remember, in the southern eastern corner, there wasn't a yisoid. And the dam that was applied, if it was applied in an area of the wall of the Mizbeach, underneath which there is no Yesoid, in all of these cases, Harei Sar Hazevach Pasal. That animal becomes completely invalidated. Now, the meat becomes invalidated. Wow. Okay. The owner got kapara kivishi gedam la Mizbeach. Can you imagine? Even if they put the dam on the inner altar. But amazing. On the other hand, the meat is completely invalidated. You may not eat it. So normally, let's say chatos, right? Kachim is given to zichrei kohuna. They cannot eat it. But that the basar of the Zavach is nifsal, mamish, that the Shehoya Zahazoyre Koshal Avoida. That's if the person who made the application, who did it in the wrong location, he was valid. Avolim Kibala Kosher. The Nasan Apostle, and this person that was Bachlal invalid. The Nasan Apostle, Sanatorum Lamay Lamata, or the Es Hanatorum Bifnim Bachutz, or the Es Hanatorum Bachutz Bifnim, or all the cases above. Oishanitan ala Kevish. Really, there's two things. We also before on the ramp, or you have to or you put it Shaloi Kenegad Yisoid, which is over the majority of the eastern side, over the majority of the southern side. Then amazing. When it's worse is better. Then you can't say it's always possible because that's b'chlal nothing. What happened is a non-action. Now, you didn't have any dam application. No one can ever eat the basar if there was no dam application. But at least there is a possibility to salvage everything. Im nisha dam hanefesh in the animal, then yachser hakosher v'ikabel shara dam hanefesh the yisrek adam b'mekoyma. In other words, the Kabbalah that happened originally, since it was thrown by a apostle, so it's called Kabbalah b'lo yizrika, doesn't render the rest of the dam to shirayim. When you have shirayim, then you can't fix it. It's not shirayim. If it's not shirayim, if there is enough dam nefesh, then you can salvage the animal. Halacha yudal. To make kachum shinis arvu, bloods of different animals that got intermixed, they got mixed together. Ben dam bidam. Dam bidam means that the same mizrah, the same keli that you use to receive the dam of one animal, you use that same keli lechatchila to receive dam from another animal. Or ben shtei kaisais, that means every animal was received in a separate utensil, but you now got mixed up. You don't know, is this the cup of the chatas? Is that the cup of the oil? Complete different avodah, right? One lamailo, one lamata, one on the four kanonis, one shtayim shein arba. So like this. Im nis orvu hanitana matana achas binitana matana achas. What's nitana matana achas, guys? Remember, B'chor, Meiser, Pesach, they had the least steps, even lechatchila. So since they are all the same avodah, that's not a problem. Yitana kol matana achas. Furthermore, now, hanitana matan arba binitana matan arba. What's matan arba? Chatos. So it's my chatas and your chatas, so we don't know whose chatas it is, or they're mixed in the same cup, but at least the same avodah is done. Also, no problem. Yitana kol matan arba. Now, now they're both they're both going to be applied in the same area. But let's say a b'char got mixed with an oil. So you remember there was a machlekas tanoim. What do you do over here? You would say, well, do the minimum. Doing the minimum can be loisigra. Doing the maximum can be baltoisev. Remember that? So the Rambam paskins yitana kol matana achas. In order not to violate the baltoisev. You remember that? You're putting something that should be given twice. The matana achas. You're doing that lachatchila. Why are you not violating baltigra? Because you're not doing actively. Because if you have to pick and choose, says not doing, you're passive. If you're gonna put everything shtayim shein arba, then you're going to be actively going baltois. That was the logic. But this also can be salvaged. Now you got a problem. If nisarbu anetonim l'maylam anetonim l'mata, and as we learned that's already essential, right? Psar hazevach pasal in halacha yud. That is something. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So the din is yishafech hakoy la'ama. You don't pour it on the mizbeach at all. You pour it straight into the water canal that took everything out of the temple complex, and therefore v'hazvachim pesulim. Furthermore, says that Amafilu nisarvu shiyarei hachatos. Shiyarei hachatos means the chatos avodah was done properly. You put it on all of the four karanas. Now you have shirayim. Where should the shirayim of the chatos be poured? On the yisoid. On the yisoid. You have it with dam ha'olah. Now I know that dam oila, not shirayim oila. Dam oila is poured on the lower part of the mizbeach, but above the area of the yisoid. So now maybe you can salvage it. Now pour it on the wall of the altar, above the area of the yisoid. So you're doing the avodah correctly for the dam oila. You're doing the avodah correctly for the shirayim chatas. Says the Rambam. Also not good. And why? Tell you why. Because the dam ha'olam has to be zrikad on the shtayim shein arba. The shenayim of the chatas have to be poured not on the wall, it's poured on the yesod. So it's not considered the same avoid. So what are you going to, and by the way, in this case, what did you lose? You didn't lose the chatas. Because the case here was the chatas avoid that was done, but you didn't do the mitzvah of pouring the shenayim on the yesod. You didn't. And you lost out the oil altogether. Now, that is if you ask the question. This is sometimes you have this in halacha. Don't ask. If the kohen didn't ask what to do, what he did was, let me go back to the case where you had dam chatos mixed with dam oila, same cup or two cups, you forgot which cup is which. Harei is kosher. Why is it kosher, Danny? Because the poil mamish, it was done. In other words, let's go in the case where both bloods were in the same cup. Or if there were two cups, you drew from both cups. Nasa l'mayla, you already did l'mayla. Let's speak about one cup. That means that what was the problem is that in this cup you have dam oil. You already violated that. Now, v'shal yitin l'mato. Now we got a problem. What's the problem with this, Danny? How come the Rambam write yitin l'mato? Because what do you have over here? You have the dam shirayim of dam chatas. If you did it l'mayla, so you have now shirayim of chatas. What did the Rambam write at the end of Halacha Yud Aleph? That if you have shirayim of chatas with dam oila, where should it be poured? It should be poured on the amma. So how is this different? So therefore, the commentators say it must be that the Rambam is not speaking about a mixture of dam chatas and dam oila. Listen to this, Danny. You had a mixture of dam chatas with shirayim oila, with shirayim of oila. The shirayim of oila also has to be poured on the yesod. So if you would have asked the question, you would have lost out. You would not have done the avodah here because you can't pour the shirayim of the oila l'mayla. But now that you didn't ask, so the dam chatas that's in this mixture was poured, was put l'mayla, so you fulfill the obligation of the chatas. Now you have shirayim chatas v'shirayim oila. Both of them have to be poured on lamata. That's what the word lamata means. Wow. And lamata means on the yisrael. It's a big doichet, but that's the way you resolve the contradiction. Halacha yudgim. Here also, so then the din is yishofech hakol la'am. That's if you ask the question. But the im lo yishal and the lokach damata revisonas memenu b'fnim ubachutz. Doesn't matter what order you followed. They put it then it's no good. You have to redo it. Yeah, for clear. So then bein shenasam b'fnim v'chazam nasam b'chutz. Or first he's put a b'chutz, then nasam b'fnim post facto. Hakol kosher. When we say halacha yud gimel, only b'shar adam menetana b'chutz. By every carbon other than a chatos. Chutz ben a chatos. Avol, listen, dam chatos. Hanasas b'chutz. That got mixed with dam chatos hanasas b'fnim. So then it depends. Im nasan b'chutz. V'chazer v'nasan b'fnim. Kosher. Nasan b'fnim. V'chazer v'nasan b'chutz. Psula. Why? What's the logic? Because Shadam Chatos Shenichnas Lehechal. We're speaking about Dam Chatos, my friends, who the blood that was not yet offered on the outer altar. If it was brought into the Hechal, Afilu Chatas Yochad Hanecheles, that becomes Asuram. Shenemar, as it says in Parshas Sav, V'chol Chatos Asher Yuva Midama. He invalidates it. Unique din by a chatos. So here you invalidated it. Now, Danny, if you put first bifnim, I'm sorry, if you put bachutz first, then you don't have a problem. Why not? Because since you applied both of these damims bachutz, so the dam chatos and nasas bachutz was already applied. You understand? What do you have now? You have dam of bifnim and shirayim. Shirayim that you brought bifnim doesn't invalidate the carbon. So it needed to be in that order. Now, when do we say this concept that dam chatos, Danny, hashanasas bachutz, if you only bring the dam inside the hechel, you invalidated it. It's only if sheyavi derech hashar hahechel, if you brought it in the usual way, you brought it through the door. Shenemar yuva derech bia avla mechnisa b'pishpeish or derech haloim or gag, then einoi nifsa. Halacha yud dalet par helam. Parhelim is parhelim shel tzibur. That's one of the animals whose bloods are poured inside the hechel. Subsequently, the emurim are burnt, and the whole animal is burnt outside Yerushalayim. And usiiri avodah zarah, same concept, Parsha Shalach, that if the mistake of the Sanhedrin was regarding idol worship, then they brought 2 karbanos, echad lo'elav, echad lo'chatos. All of these bloods have to be done b'fnim. Shedamam nichnas lehechal. But we're in the hechal, only in the hechal, only in the hechal. And what happened over here was these bloods were even only taken into the Holy of Holies, aside of the problem that you're not allowed to enter there. Also nifsum, because the same pasuk that we quoted from Parshas Tzav, v'chol chatas asher yuva midama, it invalidates the carbon. What does it mean? Sheyuva midama inside, relative to the kodesh kachim is also inside. Shebemakim zeh pnima shel makayim hu. Chein parvis shel Yom Kippurim shedamam nichnas lekodesh hakachim. Here they have to be brought taka lefnai v'lefnim. Let me add the words. Nani halkop. They sprinkled the dam, but not all of it. Remember, achas lamayla v'sheva lamata. They didn't do that. In other words, the Kohen Gadol did some of the avodah. I'm just explaining what happened, and then he brought it out to the heichal. Normally, step number 2 is now to do the avodah also 8 times on the paroiches, right? And then the other 4 and 7 on the mizbeach hazot. But then he chapped, I didn't do it all inside. And now nifsal.
Why?
Psul yoytze, Danny. Psul yoytze. Hold opposite. Psul yoytze.
Because he took it out of the country.
Before he should have. Because given sheyatza. Now let me add another detail. You would argue, well, it's okay. Don't bring it back inside. No, the Rambam began this pedic that the damim that are nasos bachutz, always, even one dam application b'diavad is machaper. All of the damim whose avoid is to do it inside, all of the sprinklings are ma'ak. L'chein, another example. Yes, gaman azoy shebekodesh hakachim. Now you get that makes it clear that we touched it correct. And v'hoitzian lahech. He's a mixas mitzvah. Then you only did some of the hazoyts. Now, by the way, these damims, what do you do at the end? The shenaim is poured on the yisoid. Same mistake. Before they did all of the avodas behechol, they brought it outside, and they took it outside of the hechol. And then the guy realized, oops, I didn't do everything. Same concept. Because shekiven sheyatza adam chutz lemim kaimai, that's called psul yaitza, and all of the applications are essential, and it wasn't yet done. Then the dam becomes puzzle. What happens now? You got to shecht another carbon. You got to go back to the beginning. Halacha tezvav. Chatos shekibel dama b'shtei koisos. New series of halachas. And v'yatza achas v'hem lachutz. Yeah, we said psul yotzem, but since you received it to begin with in 2 koisos, so then hapnimia is keshedo. The one that you left inside is keshedo. In other words, the one that's yotzem doesn't invalidate the other because it's considered separate. Now, nichnas achas mem lehechol. If one of these 2 cups were born in the hechol and v'hiz v'menu sham, we're speaking about chatois hanasois bachutz. What did we just learn? The pasuk b'chol chatas asher yuva midamam, right? So now we say afachitzoyin psulam. Why? Also based on this exeris hakosef, because it says asher yuva midamam. Midamam means even if only mixas dama in a separate kais. Im nichnas lechabava kodesh nifs. Halacha tazayin.
Worse to bring it into the hechol.
Yeah. Yes. Halacha tazayin. Dama chata shichnisa lechabava by b'fnim. But the loy chiper. So let's further clarify this unique than by achatos. So really, the rule is like this: that even though the Torah spoke about asher yuva midama, but biblically it's yuva and sprinkled. So therefore, we leave the biblical law harei kasher, and therefore umazim memeno bachutz sharei lo chiper b'kodesh. But if ichnisoi b'meized, the chachamim made a gzeidom. Puzzle. Now, Danny, that that loichiper, if the damim were brought inside and it was sprinkled on the inner altar, even b'shoigeg, that's the pasuk. The whole thing becomes invalid. But if it was only brought, then the chachamim only made as a gzeida, or they made this law only b'mezid. Halacha yudzai. Hichnis hachatos atzma lehechol. The animal was brought inside the hechol. Sheda, because it says ashiyuva midama v'loy b'sara. Halach yudches chatos oif. Chatas oif. If you remember, you slaughter it. The blood, the chatas oif is moilik lamata michuta sikra. Its dam is thrown from the neck of the animal, then it's squeezed, and then the kohanim eat the meat. So what happens? Shepirkas of the nichnas alehechol. The din is ksheidom. Why? I should huva midama. Huva. I'll tell you why. Because that's not called huva. It went by itself. Halacha yutes. Hichnis dam chatos oif. Lahechol b'tzavara. She brought the dam in, but the dam is based on the neck. You understand that? Because you can argue that since it doesn't need Kabbalah, it's as if it was already Kabbaled, and this should be included in this. Now, guys, I know we learned that if you did it b'shoigeg, okay, you did it the mezid, and the mezid just a nichnas, so does it invalidate? So there's a doubt on the Gemara. And Safek. Halacha chaf. Nishbach damachatos oif hasafa. If the blood of the chatas fell on the ground and you gathered it, in other words, it went straight from the neck of the bird onto the ground. And since it's a doubt, and by the way, this suffix also goes back to halacha yutes. What do you do if you have a doubt? The bird should be burned. Let me say what the Rambam is not writing, but we should know already by now that an animal chatos can never be brought to suffix. A chatos oif is allowed to be brought to suffix, but the meat can never be eaten. So this also, the Ba'alim are pturim, Danny. The Rambam is only writing, in other words, the owners don't have to bring another chatas oif. That's the rule. But the meat cannot be eaten. Halacha chafal. Chatas shekibel dam arba koisois. Someone received it in 4 cups. They thought, because since you have to make 4 applications, they received it in 4 koisois. And every cup was used for another corner. Then shiyari arbaton. Every cup's remainers is halachically sharaim, and they all have to be poured on the yesod. Shenemar the ace called dama yishba. However, no sanabra matanis mikois echad. So indeed, shiyarei oisia kois nishbachala yesod. But we don't consider the other 3 cups sharaim, and therefore, there's no mitzvah to pour them on the yesod. If there's no mitzvah, then you don't put something on the mizbeach. What do you do with the dam? You pour it straight into the am. Halacha chabes. We're speaking in that direction, not mayim and dam. Dam in another cup of water. That's ois, even if it looks like blood, or if it fell into kachim blood, fell into the mechulin. Always lo yasim imenu, to the point. Even post facto, you didn't ask the question puzzle. And let me add the words, even if it looks like dam in the case of mayim. However, if it was the other way around, mayim fell inside the dam sheba misrak. So here, remember the dinam of bittul has to do with mara, not with quantity. Im yesh by mara dam, if it still looks like dam and not tinted water, however you define that, kosher. And now we use the same concept. If nafal otecha yayin, or yayin is red to begin with. Yayin will never be mabatal the mara of dam or dam chulin. So then we have to estimate if that which fell in, which was not dam kachim, would have been mayim, meaning actually yomar of dam. So then it's batul, and then elizim imenu. But the im ru'im lebatal marav, the quantity of this type was not enough. Then yes, the dam kachim was not batul; it's still in its mizrak, and therefore yasam imenu. Halacha chav gimel dam hakachim. Now shenes orev b'dam suli hamizbeach. So I'll give you an example. You have an animal that's a balmum, just one example, and they shechted the balmum. You have in 1 cup dam of kachim that was kosher. So this is different than what we have been learning earlier in the chapter. You're not chatas and oila, 2 animals, but it's not from oila chatas or oila asha. We dealt with that before, but it's dam from an animal that's good that got mixed with dam from suli hamikdash, or bedam kachim shenifshelu b'shchitasa. In other words, the animal was not a balmum, but the kohen didn't do a good shchita. Just giving one of the examples. So it's invalid. Now the din is yishafech hakoyla amam. What's what yishafech hakoyla amam? That we don't say that if the dam that's not kosher would have been water. We don't say that. And now, since it was not mevatel the mara of kachim, it's worse, of course. Because there, Danny, the dam, chulin, is not bad dam. It's only chulin. Here, it's invalid dam.
This has nothing to do with which went into which.
Even in the case before that it would have been batal, that's the word. Here, we don't say batal. You look at the Kesef Mishnah is trying to explain, that will be the logic. In other words, you can't be mevatel dam psulim. Now, which means, Danny, you received the dam pasul in many cups. That will be the example over here. In other words, you have a very small amount of dam pasul. That's what this case means. So normally it should be batal, no matter how little it is. No, it's not batal. And therefore, guys, whenever you have a dam of kachim that was not put on the mizbeach, now, what happens if dam kachim got mixed into the dam kachim, fell dam tamsis? Dam tamsis, yishafech la'ama. I want to tell you that one of the approaches of the Kesef Mishnah was about yishafech la'ama's midrabanan, and whenever it's something that shechiach and the Beis Hamikdash, they made a gzeira that if you will allow a little, that was the Kesef Mishnah. So if you allow a little bit, then even when there was a lot of dam psulim, a mayim is not shechiach. Dam tamsis is shchiach. Because every animal has dam tamsis. So therefore they made a gzeira. But if you didn't ask and you applied it, then post facto kosher. Why kosher? We're speaking about in a case where the amount of dam tamsis, that's always that case. If it would have been mayim, it wouldn't have taken away the maradam of kosher. Let's go back. Allah Chavdal. So a big day today. And the Ebrei Oilois. We're speaking about things that have to be burnt on the mizbeach, and the kimitza, and the levaina, and the menachos. Let's see if kahanim, that all of them are burned. After they were imbued in with kedushas mizbeach, im zarach echad nikolelo al gabe ishim. Once they were thrown on the fire, whether they were thrown bayad or Bayad means you took it out of the klei shadas. Guys, the kimitza was put in, like we mentioned, in the klei shadas sheni. And the kohen took it out of the klei shadas. And he threw it on the fire. Or he threw it by, throwing it from the keli. Bein by yamin, bein by smoil. The din is that which needed to be put on the fire, when it was put on the fire, no matter how it got there, had a eluk sheni. Halachafei, hamayim, v'hayayim shenischan. Right, Maim and Sukkos, Yain, every time there is Nisachim. Bein Beka'ara, whether they were poured with a bowl, whether they were poured with the measure of the Beis Hamikdash, which was the hin measure. Bein B'shar Klei Sharis Kshedim. But here we say that if Niskan B'chlei Chayil, unlike Halacha Chav Daled, they were speaking about liquid, if they were poured with a non-consecrated utensil, or by hand. I'm saying, like you poured the water in your hand and you put it in that bowl, that silver bowl. Here it's psulin. Final halacha chavav. Ivarim shesidron. V'chein koimet shesidroi. The sidr eitzim ala marach ala ma'ila mehem. So in halacha chav dalid, you put it on the pyre. Even if you did it in the unusual way, you're going to be good. What happens if after you put these limbs on the pyre area, then you built the pyre on top of it? Verstehst? Oishe sidran, on the sides of the woods, not on top. If you remember, these limbs were thrown on the marach, but then there was a kohen there making sure it went on top of it. Areza safek im derech haTorah b'kach or ein derech haTorah b'kach, and therefore lachatchila yasekein. But the imasa, we the Rambam paskins would so. All right, moving on to today's second chapter, Perek Gimel of Psulei HaMikudashim is now speaking about kachim, animals that were shechted on top of the mizbeach. We consider the top of the mizbeach like Sfoin HaMizbeach, even though the mizbeach, big machlokes, where exactly was it placed? But there, you can divide the mizbeach top also into right, left, or north, south, or according to many Tanoim, not to all of them. There is an area on top of the Mizbech that's Bidroi Moishel Azara. We don't say that. The top of the Mizbech is always considered Safin. And the big topic of Perek Gimel is going to be this rule. Guys, these words are Meduyak v'Yoser. Kol That whole rule, if you remember, many times things are invalid. But if it's called the royal ishim, once it went on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. And there is the same concept, even stronger in the mizbeach hapnimi. There, the words are mizbeach hapnimi mekadosh psulim bein ru'uyim loy bein even not ru'uyim loy, and we'll explain this and give many applications in the third chapter. The third chapter has 25 halachas. Let's begin with halach, guys. Whoever
says, even according to the beings that say it was fully in the south, it doesn't
matter. Yes. Halach. By the way, the Rambam already gave the dimensions where the mizbeach is. I don't remember where the Rambam positions it. But the Rambam went through every single. Again, the fact that the Rambam gives the dimensions of the whole temple complex, 187 by 135. Just understand that the moment you find one remnant of Bayesheni, you will know exactly where the Beis Hamikdash is to be placed, without doubt, according to the Rambam. Simple. Okay. And then you know everything. Then all of the fakers that we have nowadays is because we don't know the Metzias. It's easy to know the Metzias, especially now with technology. Our enemies, they made these tunnels to go kill us. So there's technology that we developed, we the Jewish people, that is unprecedented. That we can know what's going on the ground without even going on the ground. I'm saying we have technology to know exactly where the Bayesheni is. Halacha, okay, Peri Gimel halacha. Kachim sheshachatim reish hamizbeach. Let's begin with this second. You shechted it on top of the mizbeach. Haki'ilu shechatim b'tzafayin. That's it. Shenamar God apasik in Yisrael v'zavachta olav es oilisecha ve'eshlomecha. Now, guys, I know shlamim is kachi kala. Oil is kachi. Oil has to be done b'tzfayin hamizbeach. The fact that the Torah puts them both together by saying v'zavachta olav, that's a meduyik malame shekol hamizbeach royal shchitas ha'oila, and the shchitas hashlamim, even if it is on the Durham side of the temple complex. Halacha base oila shechata b'reish hamizbeach, like we just mentioned. Now, you see, all of this was really an intro, Yaakov, to this whole concept. Im Allah lo yered, and we're going to see when we say that, and where we say even more by the mizbeach hapnimi, and where we don't say. Now you shechted the oil b'reish hamizbeach, or even if you shechted it lamata, normal, and for whatever reason, some chacham brought up the ganze animal to the top of the mizbeach. So based on this rule that once something is on the altar, it doesn't go down that quick. So a lot of the next steps have to be done b'reish hamizbeach. Yaf shedoisa, where do you skin it? There. Where do you cut it up? There. B'mikoyma. You do it mamish, wherever you are on top of the altar. Guys, the top of the altar was huge. Bisman Bayesheni, and we know clearly, as the Rambam writes, that the dimensions of the Mizbeach, Bisman Bayesheni, was really a copy of the dimensions of the Mizbeach that's going to happen with the Bayeshlish. And now, 1 second, the intestines have to be cleaned out. Okay, that's already not respectful. Now you're made at HaKarobayim. Umadicha lamata. Now the Karobayim are going to be burnt on the Mizbeach, so you bring them back up. I'm just curious. When the pious, what did they do with the pious? They bought them out there. Now the hide then will be taken down and given to the Kayan. And let's go back to the Halacha Gimel. The Chen Zvachim. What is Zvachim, guys? A cloud. Zvachim means shlamim. Remember that. The word Zvachim sometimes, even though Zavach means shechting something with a knife, in Kachin, if it doesn't say, so we went Oila and Shlamim, it fits because the pasuk that Rambam brought from Yisrael was Oila Secha, Shlomecha. Zvachim shchutim. Whether you shechted it on the mizbeach or someone picked up the animal, they didn't know, and they went to the top of the mizbeach. So now, once again, once something is on top of the mizbeach, you don't take it down that quick. Mafshit umenatech b'mekoyma, and now umeirat hakrobayim amadich mamayim v'chayzer amaylo isa umeirat es orves habasar b'noisnu leba'alim. In other words, the parts that are meant to be burnt are already there. Why? This is the cloud, guys. These words, these words are going to be defined beautifully. Something that's ra'oi le'ishim, im olo l'reish hamizbeach lo yerei. Shenema, that's the meaning of kol hanegeya b'mizbeach yigdash. Yigdash means you stay where you are. Once a Yid is promoted, not so simple to demote. Yochol, afal pisha eno roi. Now we're going to define roi and not roi. Do you say this always? Not always. Because the Torah also writes in Parshas Tzav, hi ha'oila al moita. And from that we learn, fakert an exclusionary. What's moita? Oila. Doesn't only mean an oila. But to tell you, so you have an inclusionary concept. And then you have an exclusionary concept. That ma oila shiro uyola ishim, there we say also we say that af only kol oila ishim by the mizbeach hachitzin. We'll see again the mizbeach hapnimi has even greater power of keeping things there once they got there. Now, what did it mean by oila ishim? So it says that I'm a malachadalo. Oila shehel chayla resham mizbeach. So we said already before, if you shechted it on top of the mizbeach, you're good. But if you brought it up alive and you didn't shecht it yet, you understand? The animal living is not called ra'oi le'ishin. So now take it. Shadayin ein ra'oya. Another example. So even though the flour was niskadesh in a klei, right, in which you did the belila, we got that. But I will keep on mentioning, but by a mincha, after the kemitza, you put it in, let's call this the klei sheni. Sometimes it's already in the third, but you put it in another. So you did not put it in the klei shadas yet. It doesn't have the kedushas mizbeach. Or v'chol isurei hamizbeach sha'alu. We'll learn more about the psulei hamizbeach. They're not called royal leishim. Yerdu lefisha enum ro'oyim mitchilasan. And the word roy means mitchilasan. In other words, we're going to have certain things that now are invalid. But there was a moment that they could have been valid, that they were valid, and that will be a big difference. Not the time of shchita. All the blood was spilled out. This is not called ro'il ishim at all. Even im also tated. However, it could have been off. It should have been offered. But you know what? Prior to bringing up the emurim, boom, it's already alois hashach. Shalom. Bein shalom hadam. Now, lina sadam, the same word means after shkia, or the meat or the emurim because alois hashachar came, or a zebach that should have been brought on the mizbeach, but someone wrongfully took it out of the azar. Oi, it became tummy. Now here we go further. Now listen to this, guys. A carbon that was right away not good, but it became invalidated either b'machshavas azman. That means that the kohen that was doing the shechting or the yisrael, or then the kohen during any one of the four avodas, shchita, kabbalah, ilocha, and zrika, had a machshava that they're going to do another step of this carbon beyond the prescribed time, making the carbon pigul, if that was the only invalidation here, or the kavana was that they're going to be eating a part of it or applying part of it outside the right place. This is really called pasul, not pigul pasul. Oy b'machsheva shinoi. The machsheva shinoi is the first Mishnah in Zvachim that this is a carbon oila, and the chacham, by mistake, had in mind this is a shlamim. He had the wrong intent in mind. Now, guys, this isn't only by all of the karbanis that at least the carbon is valid, ela shaloi olu, even by Chatas and Pesach, that machshava of Shinoi completely invalidates it. Here we say, carbon. When can a tummy do a carbon? Other carbonis, the carbonis that may come betuma. What carbon is that, guys? A carbon sibur that has a fixed time. Or another type of invalidation. Or kachim shenishchatu bedaraim, or sheniskabel dam bedaraim. Even though everything we mentioned in Allah Zayin is psulim, here im olol resham mizbeach lo yerdu pashat chaval asman. But the Gemara has to go through every single one, explaining the difference between what we learned in Allah Zayin and in Allah Hey and Vav, and it's all going to come back to the words ru'uyim leishim. Now Allah Ches kol shapsuli bak kodesh. You know what it means for a kodesh? That it became invalid after it entered the azara, or it became invalid after it was geshachtim. Now, hakodesh mekabloi. What does it mean, hakodesh mekabloi? im alu lo yerdu. And we say, Kshem shem alu lo yerdu, kach, 1 second, nekuda. That's it. In other words, halacha ches is explaining, these are the kitzur words of how Zion is different from what came before it. Because it's called psulei bakoidish, it's called royal ishim, versus other things that became invalidated not bakoidish. Let's leave it at that. Again, in middle of a halacha new topic. Now the Rambam says something else. Even when we say yem alu lo yerdu, that's only if it's still alu. But kshem shem alu lo yerdu, if you did bring it down, you shouldn't have, but it's not longer, it's no longer on top of the mizbeach, lo yalu shniya, because at the end of the day, absolum. Halacha tes. However, when do we say that once it went down, don't bring them? Even that is going to be limited. That's only if they were not actually on the fire being burnt. But if any of the fire chopped some of it, that means it's a little bit burned, now it's even more holy. Afal pisha yardu, yalu shniya, the yashlim haktor asam. Musar means Yidden, right? We are all on fire on Yom Kippur, right? And let's say if the fire chapped us, then even if, God forbid, we step down the altar, we have the responsibility to climb right back up. Halacha Yud. That means when the kohen did the kmitza, Rabbi Chaim, I'll come over here, he thought, I'm doing kmitza, but I'm going to throw it on the mizbeach after shkia. That's it. Here, that's. And then the chacham divided that kmitza. Some of it was never brought up. Some of it was brought up and thrown into the fire. Now, a kmitza is considered one entity. So the mile is, even though this is a terrible psul, pigel, not only is it royal ishim, im alu lo yerdu, but here we say that once some of it was brought in the fire, im alu lo yerdu means not bring it up. It means if you brought it up, lo yerdu. The kmitza that you left on the ground has to be brought up. Because the kmitza is one entity. Yalu kuloi, halach yudal, evorim bechalavim, ukematzim. Guys, halk up, shalom, b'rosh hamizbeach. In other words, they are disqualified. Ke'ilu lanu ba'azaram. So that's a very important correction. If you remember when I was speaking about how they prepared the pyre and how they would put all of the evarim on the sides of the mizbeach, I don't know if I quoted the words of the Rambam, that there's no lina b'rosh hamizbeach, but here the Rambam is explaining what that means. Here, no lina b'rosh hamizbeach means that since it's b'rosh hamizbeach, here's Danny, im alu lo yerdu. Ki'ilu lanu ba'azara. Ki'ilu lanu ba'azara means they become disqualified. The reason why it's normally not problematic is because it's b'rosh hamizbeach. But therefore, im yardu lo yalu. So either I have to correct what I said when it came to the maracha, or there's some other thing over here. If I remember correctly, the lashon there was that it's lechatchila okay. We're speaking about the evanim that were put on the altar, but they weren't fully burnt. You have to prepare the maracha. So they would remove the entire maracha, so they would leave the unburnt evanim b'rosh hamizbeach. And if it was not room on the ramp, on the higher part, because like this, when they build a new maracha, after they put the Tamar Shel Shachar, they re-put all of those ivarim. How can you re-put it psulina? So the Rambam is really saying it's not pshat. There's no psulina, since alu lo yerdu. That's the pshat. Okay. Another rule: this concept that if it goes on the altar, it doesn't have to be touching the ground of the altar. So let's say a kohen is holding something in his hands. That you also say you are on the mizbeach. Here also we say lo yerdu. However, this is a common thing. Person is chayv to bring a korban asham. Asham told you there was a chaylev and shuman, and he didn't know which one is which, and he ate one of them, and you don't know still what you ate. Asham told. A person who designates an animal, you designate an animal, good luck to you. Let's see how long you'll hold on to it. Many people have an experience, they get an animal, and before they blink, the animal ran away. So what do? They get two animals, lechatchila, and they say to the Eibishter, listen, I know I'm only chayiv one. I'm only being magdish one, but I already have two, so if I lose one, I have its replacement. And here, instead of doing what you said, only keeping one as a backup, the shachat eshneim. You shechted both of them, which you shouldn't have. Shekodam vehe'ele emurim shel echad mehem koydem zerika. Prior, right? Prior to the zerika, you brought up the emurim. Now here it's different. And let's go. And then, guys, what happened then? And then, you know what you did? Listen, you threw the dam of the other one. So now you have bona fide good emurim. Here we say what was brought up is b'chlal nothing. Because since now you shechted the other Rasham and you sprinkle the dam of the other Rasham, so now bring up the fats of the other Rasham. And this, Yerdu, Gewaldik. Halacha Yudal. Hazevach HaPasol, or B'hanasachim HaPsulim, that were brought to the Rosh Hashanah. So everything that we learned until now, if it's Ru'uya L'Ishim L'Yeda, that's only on the animal. Hazevach L'Yeda K'ma Sheviyanu. But you know what? The Nesachim, yes, Yerdu. Guys, we're not speaking about a kemitza from a bona fide mincha. We're speaking about the nesachim that come as accessories based on oil and shlomis. We're not speaking about, again, flour. We're speaking about wine. You know why? Because nesachim are not ru'uya le'ishim. They're never put on fire. Oif. And va'olah lo yered. You know why? Malikas ksheira b'zar. The koimetz ha-mincha shekamatza izar. Now, kemitza cannot be done by a zar. Va'olah, yes, yered. Why, Danny? Lo ru'oy le'ishim. That's why the words ru'oy le'ishim is so essential. Now, afal pish is that possible? Is that possible? This is even worse. Zaki ilu loy niskadish klal.
So Malika is not kosher b'zor. Shtita is kosher b'zor.
Danny, I think Malika is ksheira b'zor. Okay. Take a look what he writes over here. I think I was learning this yesterday. I think that Rambam explained it that way. And if I stand corrected if I'm wrong. Now, the echad azor, the echad sha'ar psulim, in both of what we learned, that we still consider the bird ru'oy le'ishim, but by kemitza, it's not at all considered ru'oy le'ishim. Now, halacha tezayin ve'elu im yalu yerdu. So number one, like we keep on learning, kol she'enu ru'oy le'ishim. So let's define this. I'll tell you what it means. Psar kachem kachem. You know, we're speaking about a good carbon, a good shechita. Everything is good. Guys, kachem, other than an oil, the basar is given to the kaihanim. They're never meant for the issue. Psar kachem, they're given to the owners. The moiser of the oimer. Oimer also only has a kemitza removed from it. The shiyarim menachas. The shtei alechem, the lechem upon him, never meant to go on the fire. Guys, the ketaitis is meant to be offered on the inner altar. It's not the ru'oy le'ishim of the outer altar. Or the tzemer sheberashe kevasim that are detached. We learned is the beard of the goat that's detached, the bones that are detached, the agitim, the akarnayim, the tefalayim, the hooves. All of these cases im alu yerdu because they're not called ru'oy le'ishim. Halacha yud zayin koimetz shemitza shamlei alo etzem. Some of the oil of the kemitza, was squeezed out, and now it fell on a bone. Guys, the bone is detached. And this bone was taken off the altar. Yachziroi. Bring it back up. Why? Shadavar safek shema chiburei oilam. Guys, chiburei oilam is not the bone. You know what chiburei oilam is? The oil in the kemitza. And that, if that has to be brought up, and now that saturated the bone. Wow. Okay, very good. And so there's a suffix about it. Interesting. Since it's a suffix, you bring it back up. And here some of it was burnt. No, the kemitza was burnt. And everything we learned, everything that was partially burnt on the mizbeach, even if yarad, yalla. Now, halacha, the chitz, how far it goes, even the etz. But if the oil is considered, then it goes further. Halacha Yudches. Mizbeach HaPnimi Mekadosh. Now, Mizbeach HaPnimi has even a greater power. That's the word, guys. Mizbeach HaChitzon, the words are Kol Haroyu Leishim. Im Allah Lo Yered. By the Mizbeach HaPnimi, anything, even Bein Oyim, Bein She'ein Oyim Loi. And remember that, Danny? I remember learning this because the Mizbeach HaPnimi has two dinim. It's a Mizbeach. That makes it equal to the Mizbeach HaChitzon. The Mizbeach HaPnimi also has a din of a Klei Sharis. It has like a double Kedusha. Abo Mizbeach HaChitzon, Eina Makadosh Ala Psulim Ro'im, like Moshe B'Yan. Okay, Mizbeach HaChitzon, She'lo Yizvachim Shenifsalu, we set like a Lo Yirdu. But if also like Ktoiris Zara Teirei, right? She'eina Ktoiris Ro'im Mizbeach HaChitzon, as we just learned in Tezayin. Abo, a contrast, Mizbeach HaPnimi, She'olo like Koimetz Mincha. Guys, a Koimetz Mincha is never burned in their altar. But someone put the Kemitza on it. And being kosher, being pasul. That's the additional power. That's a yid. All the yidden. We were put on the Mizbeach HaPnimi. We got to do tshuva, but we're there. We're in a good place. Now, everything we learned isn't only regarding the Mizbeach itself. The ram, and if you remember, all of this came in the beginning of this Pedic from the words, right? That same words. So if Yigdosh means so when the trader writes bohem it means the same thing. Now let's go more than that. And if you know what Niskadesh means? Means even if it became invalidated, it doesn't mean that you're going to fulfill your obligation. It doesn't mean that you can do the next steps of the Avodah, but it means that once something is imbued with Kedusha Saguf, not so pasha. Whether that was a whole scene. Some of them have to be burnt, some of them have to be buried, but you can't be redeem it. You can only redeem things that only have Kedusha's done it. Halacha Yutes.
Anything that we're keeping on the Mizbeach, it doesn't mean that the carbon was good.
It does not mean that the carbon was good. That's the whole point. Yeah, sometimes it's not good. Correct.
They keep it on there because of
clear. Pigel. Yeah, pigel. You know how bad pigel is. So if someone eats of it, it's chayv kares. But it's there. Now, many times around holy tzaddikim, you have let people complain, they're not so this, they're not so that. I think that's the same word. Just because they're around tzaddikim doesn't mean that they are tzaddikim themselves. It means that I think once im alu lo yevdu.
So, by the way, the Mizbeach didn't always have a fire on it?
Mizbeach HaPnimi did not always have a fire. Fakert. No. The Esham Tomed was only in the Mizbeach HaChitzon. The Mizbeach HaPnimi only had coals put on it twice a day prior to the Avodah of the Ketores. I don't know how long these coals burned, but Al Piderach HaTeva, they went out. And that's why in the morning there was the Dishun HaMizbeach HaPnimi. Didn't have to.
Be enough to burn someone who put
it doesn't even mean it's going to burn. I think it means that. Lo means that when they would put the coals on the mizbeach, it would have to burn it.
But they wouldn't make a mistake.
Okay, I have a practical question. Okay, halacha yutes. Now, guys, like this. So now that we gave so much power to klei sharis, if you remember, there were measuring utensils that were given the status of a klei sharis. And here there's a difference between the dry measuring utensils and the liquid. If you remember, there were only two dry. I think it was a Yisoran and Chatzi Yisoran. And then by the liquids, it was the Hin, Chatzi Ahin, Revius Ahin, Shlishus Ahin. Then we had the Revius. We had all these different, maybe there were 8, I think. Okay, anyways, Ein Klei Halach Mekatris Es Hayosh. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't imbue it with Kedushas Mizbeach. V'loi Klei Hayovesh Mekatris Es Halach. So when we say that once it went in the even of Psulim, it has to be Mekadosh. You know why? Because it's considered completely natural. If you have it, Rabbi Chaim, if you can check what I said before about the Malik, I'm very curious. Halacha Tezvav, When the Rambam paskins, oik shemalak is over lo yeded. See if he writes malika kshedev azar over there. It could be their mistakes there also, but I think that's what I remember. Here's Danny. Huh? Thank you. Okay, now I'll go back. In halacha tezvav lo yeded, that I know that Rambam writes that even though that possible was that possible. The difference is that malika kshedev azar bebama. Okay, so I take away. You're right. Malika is not kshedev azar. Okay, very good. Malika, you're right. Malika is kshedev azar bebama. That was much of my mistake. I was rushing yesterday, and that's the whole question. Halacha tezvav afal pisha zeh pashal zeh pashal. Okay, very good. Okay, we're back over here, guys. Halacha. We're in the middle of halacha yutes. I'm sorry about that. Let's go. That it's not mekadesh, that which is not royal b'midas halach v'yovish b'migdash k'mashur because they were meant to measure, and since it was meant to measure solids or meant to measure liquids, if you put the opposites in it, it's called not royal. But that's not the only klei Stam klei like the mizrak. Now I know that a mizrak was made to be mekadesh the dam that falls into it, the bowls. But if someone took a mizrak and they put in it any other item, even yavesh, hamizrak is mekadesh alach ve'yavesh. It's different. Ukleisharis mikachim dam hapasul likarev. Herst, because of the din im alu lo yerdu. Im alu lo yerdu. That the Rabbi Zajac here also. If it's dam pasul, it doesn't mean that there'll be a kapara. No, it's pasul. Like it's already on the klishares. Has to be put. Halacha chav kol kliyasharis ein mikachim. Interesting. So every time we learned, so when we learned so many times that you poured the dam to the amma, it's because it wasn't the mizrak. Maybe not in the klei. If it was put in the klei, then it's as if it went on the altar already. Okay, very good. This power is only if it was in the area of the mikdash. But another thing, the ein mekachem elamidas. The ein mekachan elam mitoichan, and the ein mekachan if the keli is intact. If the keli was nikfu, then we say im oisen heim emalachton shoyu oisen vehem shleimim. They still have that power mekachin if everything else was met. The im lav mekachin, but the ein mekachan elam aleim. Look at all of these details. Okay, so let's go back. So when we say that if the klei was filled with dam sulim, if they're full, when it comes to the measuring utensils, ein mekachois chaserin ele im datan lemaloison. In other words, the im ein datan lemaloison, the im ein datan lemaloison, and you didn't intend to fill them up. They have some power. What is the power mekachois lihi pasel? So what does it mean lihi pasel? If something is in a klei sharis, then if you take it outside, it becomes invalid. It has enough power to create that issue, but not enough power to say, "Ooh, it's in it that goes on the mizbeach." Allah chafal klei sharis mekachim, even shaloi bismanon, but only again lihi pasel v'lo lihi karav ketza. And it was put in a klei sharis balayla. So now psulino. So nifsal after a dalei sashachar bisari. Aval ena karev. Kegoin shekamitz mincha balayla. V'nasan comes to the klei sharis. You're done. Areizu nesref halacha chav beis. And not what? Not I can put it on the mizbeach because it's in a klei sharis. That you don't say. Halacha beis mizbeach shenivgam. If the mizbeach itself became damaged, I think we learned either if more than a tafach was removed, or if the rock part of it doesn't have the smoothness of the knife of a shchita. At this moment, nifsulu kol hakochim sh'hoyisham shchutim b'mikdash. Oy gewalt. If they were already slaughtered, that the blood was not yet put, because since now shaharei ein sham mizbeach lizrik olav shenemar v'zavachta olav v'sazuknecha k'loimer tizbach only when v'oyim b'tikunai. So at that moment, all of the karbanos whose damims are in Nizrakos, they all became invalid. Avol kachim chayim, the living animals, in other words, then fix it. Ella kishiyabana mizbech yikrebu. Because of the klal, ein balachayim nidachim. Halach chavdal. Higdish behemos shalinim mizbeach. Right now, if a person is magdish an animal, kishiyabana makriven oisam, if they're not beyond their time, right? If they're not blemished, because hadicham yikari ein nidachim. But there's two dinim. There's a din of bala lechaim ein nidachim. And here the Rambam is adding another din. Bechlal, something that was from the outset not valid. In the case before, it was even worse because they were magdash to carbon when the mizbech was not potent. Then the mizbech got blemished. Here we have to say that balichaim in the dach. The final halacha chafein. You can't eat kachim while the mizbech is pogum. Now, if they threw the dam and then the mizbech became pogum and you can't eat it, at least the owners got their kapara. At least the owners got it, but you can't eat it. There has to be a kosher mizbech. But then look at Shem Kalam. While the mizbech is pogum, and now we are starting today's final chapter, Pedic Dalid Sulei Hamikudashim. We're going to learn about the famous Chatois Hamesois, Halacha L'Moshe Sinai. We're going to learn that the Rambam paskins like Reish Lakish. These were the Gesumta Sugyas over there. Regarding a chata she'avra shenasa, we're going to learn that this din is so meduyak that we don't add anything to it. We only put these animals, we allow them to die if it's exactly the case that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, and we don't extend it beyond other areas, which sometimes there is a certain amount of this is like that. We don't do it at all. We're going to learn also about Ashamais. We're going to learn some dinim of oilois, but the big bulk of the beginning will be the din of chatois. Hamesis Pedic Dalet has 27 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Case number one, Vladcha, guys, remember that if a commoner does a sin, Parshas Vayikra, the animal has to be female. Now, what happens when you have a female animal is that it can get pregnant and have a child. Another din by achatas, you only bring achatas for a specific sin. I know the asham is the same, but this is only for achatas. So imagine, I did a sin. A person ate chayil. A person was machal Shabbos, chatos. And prior to bringing the animal that they designated, the animal gave birth. Now the kedusha of the mother goes to the child. So now you have two chatois, but you're going to bring the mother. What do you do with the vlad? So no, I didn't sin twice. I only sinned once. So what do you do? So normally you would say by any animal, wait until it gets blemished, sell it, and with the money, buy oilus nadav allocates on the zbeach. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai, by achatos, you have to let the animal die. With details in a moment. Machnisa l'kipa. Tumura's chatos is the same concept. A person designated the chatos. And we're going to learn in the Rambam, Silchas Tumura, the psukim that are very clear in the Torah. If I make a declaration, and I have an animal that's chulin, that's fit to be this type, and I say, zu tumura zu. Aleph, don't say that. But if you said it, they are both holy. I have two animals. I only need to bring one. Case, the chatos shemesu ba'oleh. Chatos is for kapara. Nisa is machaper. So normally, if a person designates an oil and they die, the Yarshim bring that animal as an oil. But by a chatos, you cannot bring that for the chatos, even though the father sinned, the father already is atoned for. Case number 4, chatos sha'avdom. And when it got lost, the owners said, oh, my animal got lost. Let me designate another animal. They designated another animal, and they offered the other animal. And now you find the first one. Shanim says, these are 4 cases. If you remember, then in the Mishnah, we had a 5th case. What was the 5th case? The case that you designated an animal, achatos, kizva se'ira has to be in the first year of the life, and you kratz to bring it. And this is not connected to Malta Acher, because even though we learned, for example, that your oiver the mitzvah say by the first regel, I designated the animal when the animal was 11 months old. Who asked you? In the B'chodesh Mar Cheshvan. By the time the first regel comes, this chatos cannot be brought. That's a 5th case, which there is a Reish Lakish that says it's not from the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and so paskins the Rambam. The Rambam only counts these 4 cases: flat chatos, tumuras chatos, chatos shemesu be'alel, and chatos she'avdom. Harei elul yamusu nekuda. The animal has to be left to die, and that's a unique chiddush And what don't we say? What would we normally say? That even though the animal has kedushas mizbeach, okay, wait until it gets blemished and then redeem it with all of the dinim of what happens to that animal, and the money should be used to buy a oila sibur leketz hamizbeach. We don't say this over here. Good. That's half of this chapter. Then it says, now, if you find it, and we're talking about the final case, you lost it. So if you found it after you designated animal number 2 and you brought animal number 2, then the first animal is left to die. But if you find it after you shechted a chatas ashmiya shehifish, but you didn't get through the dam, now the Rambam says that he's a suffix in Thomas. Or what? Or if the original animal should be tira achiv lu'emun. Now what's the din? Here's the word. So you would argue if there's a suffix, the Rambam says even when there's a suffix, lefikach Thomas. Why Thomas? Because unlike bird karbonis, which may be brought ala safek, we speak about a chatos, an oil is not a problem. And you can make if I owe it, I owe it. If I don't owe it, then a dava. That's unique then by chatos. By behemas chatos, a suffix cannot be brought. And this we do apply from Allah Moshe Messina, that if you cannot bring this animal, you have to leave it to die. How do you put it to die? Not the ketzad, hey meses, I know that the Mishnah says the kippah, but the Rambam uses the word bias. And the noyal aleim, you don't feed them. It sounds in your name. This is clear. Now we limit it. But any chatas tzibur, same example, and you lost the animal, so the tzibur designated another animal. They brought the other animal. Meaning even after the kapara, for sure if you find it before. It doesn't matter whether it's a balmum or not a balmum when you find it. In all cases, you apply the normal rule, which is tirach l'mum and v'timacher. And now we put the male in a dava, which is oilas tzibur kates. Kates hamizbeach means dessert for the altar. Means we don't want the altar to be idle. So it was brought whenever the mizbeach is not being used. They brought these karbanos. It's not even shaykh to say the case of Vlad. You know why? Because males don't have children. So today it's a chiddush, and all chatois hatzibur are males, or a temura, because a temura's chatas tzibur, the temura has to be the same type, male. Oisha mesu ba'ala, it's not shaykh because the tzibur doesn't die. Shekol kabanis hatzibur are zecharim, and the ein hatzibur oisum temura. You can't make temura not because male, because if there's a carbon tzibur, then temura should l'chayda have to be made by a tzibur, but a tzibur cannot even make it. It's not effective. As well as lechas temura. And there's no ein kol Yisrael Mason. So from the 4 cases that Rambam enumerates in Halacha Aleph, the only one that's shaykh is that they had the kapara. That we designated the animal got lost, we took another animal, the other animal was brought. Even here, we don't say yamos. Yes, tira achetibabu. Halacha beis par v'soshem kipurim. Shavdu and v'achrem tachteyam. Or v'chein tzira avoda zara by the chatas. Par helam davar shel tzibur by avoda zara. Shavdu v'achrem tachteyam. Here we say again, these are considered communal karbanes. Yidu achi ibul memum and people in the davar because of what we mentioned. She'ein chatas tzibur mesa. Now we have a kash. Hold on. If the animal itself is not going to be put to death, and what will you do with it? The money will be used la'oilas tzibur because the tzibur already got a tone from another animal. Why don't you bring this animal as an oila? And he's explaining why didn't we ask that question before? I'll tell you why. Aside of the halacha l'Moshe Messinai, because a chatas is a female, an oil is a male by the yachid. So there, if not for the halacha l'Moshe Messinai, right, the only option would have been wait until it gets blemished and sell it and buy another animal. It's not even shaykh. But by tzibur, since the chatas is also a male, and we're not applying the halacha l'Moshe Messinai, so why don't you offer it as an oila? The Rambam says gavaldik, it's a gezerah. Think about it. Because listen, guys, if the tzibur designated this animal lachatos and the tzibur lost it, the guy in charge lost it, and they designated animal number 2. What happens if now you find animal number one? That animal has to be brought lachatos. We're not saying which one you'll pick, but if you pick the first one, it has to be lachatos. You may not use it for oil. So in order to prevent that from happening, we said the one that you lost will never be brought. So you'll never bring it wrong. You have to wait until it gets blemished. Okay. Right. Hamafrish chatosi ve'odom yachid. And not in the case that we said that you brought number two. No, you didn't bring it. Now you found the first one. Which one is brought? Now the other one will be left to die, but which one is the other one? So listen to this, my friends. If you chose any one of them, what did the Gemara say? When you chose one, what are you doing when you choose one? You're rejecting the other. That's called dichui biyodayim. Head diverte. How beautiful is that? Whenever a yid chooses holy, he's pushing away klip. Choosing one doesn't only mean that you chose that one. It means that you rejected the others. So then the other one is put to death. And mind you, the Rambam is limiting these cases. That's why even here it's put to death because there was a dichui biyodayim. But if you ask the shayla to a rav, and they're going to tell you, the first one should be brought, and they right away going to say, and the yiplu the mel in a double, because the halacha l'moshe misina was exactly that chatos she'avda, and it was found after that you were machaper with the other one, and now you found it before you found the kaparas. Not exactly the same case. So if you took it, you made a dichui biyodayim. It's interesting. But if you didn't take it, the Rav gave the psak din. I'll tell you more than that. When the Rav tells you take the first one, don't forget the second one was only as the backup. It's not called a dichui. Now, if you found the original one, but one of them is tamima, one is a balmum. Tamima tikrav, guys, a balmum tipada. How great is that? Because there was no dichui biyodayim. You cannot bring that one because it's blemished. And the halacha l'moshe Sinai was only shenim tzeis ma'achar shenischapu be'oleo. Here you found it before the kapah. Now nishchatom. That's la'achar pidyoino. La'abalas mamum. You were paid it and you shechted it. Koydem sheyizek damatmima. Then it's also problematic. Hareizu asura ba'no. No, this whole din that tipada, you will need to get your atonement. Now, what happens if now you have two and they're both bali mumen? So the din is sell both of them. The yavi midimeim chatos, and the rest you can still salvage. So we really limited the case of that. It's only if you find it la'achar sheneschapru be'oleo, then meis halacha now. Hifresh chatos v'yavdom. Guys, I'll come up, listen to this case, and you were mafresh animal number two, tachtea, and you genius, you lost animal number two. Now you're mafresh animal number three, and now you find all the three, and all the three are here. So like this, if you took out the first one, what did we say? When you took out the first one, it's as if you were doiche biyodayim the second one. So the second one is tamus, but not the third one. Why not? Because the third one was exchanged for the first. No, it wasn't. The third one is not shaykh to the first. Again, we're just limiting the halacha l'moshe Sinai. So the third one, it had kedushas haguf, because when you designated the third one, you didn't have the first two animals. So okay, so tira if neschaper b'shlishis, so we consider that a dichui biyodayim to the other one. Which other one? What did the shlishi come to exchange? The shenis. So a shenis mesav, but again, the first one is too far removed from the third. However, if you chose the middle one, genius, that's called a dichui biyodayim of both. Shtei mesois. Well, if they would have asked, the Beis Din would have said, take the first, and in that case, we learned even the second one will not be put to death. Allah.
Yeah, so why was he? I'm just not understanding. The three are in front of him, and if he chose the first one, it says that the second one gets put to death.
Sure.
But if it was done by Beis Din, then it wouldn't be.
That would be. We already learned that. Yeah. Hello. Yes. Right. Allah. If you lechatchila designated two animals, you knew you don't know how to watch. I don't know how to watch animals. What's going to happen? You're going to get an animal. What are you going to do with it? It's going to escape. So you lechatchila took two. Now the din is mischaper be'ezu sheyirtza, and the other one is tira chetibu boom. But the male and dove, it's not a problem. Again, chatois hamesis is very limited because when you took the two lechatchila, you knew you're not bringing both from the beginning. So whichever one you take, the other one never had that amount of chatos that you have to leave it to die. Halacha vav. Hifresh chatos while it was meuberes. Unlike the Vlad Chatos that Rambam is saying, you were mafresh chatos prior to it being pregnant. Here it already was pregnant. The Yolda, we're lenient because since the animal already had a fetus, it's as if you were mafresh two animals. Lachrais. Which is great. So therefore, the one that you won't bring, you won't have to leave to die. And now we're learning the case that many other Amoraim hold are part of the Chamisha Chatois HaMesos. The Rambam rejects that. We're learning now the din of Rish Lakish. And now for Avra Shanasa, like we mentioned, not left to die, befedish, tira achivul bamum, and betimacher b'meacheres, chein mifresh chatosoi b'chlal. And prior to you bringing even of bamum, so what did you do, my friends? What do you do now? You sell the animal, yeah, and you buy the yavi b'meacheres. Halacha ches kol chatos she'avda v'nimtzis koydem kaparam. Even if you found it as a balas mum, or if you found it achar she'avra shenasa eino mesa elatira achiv b'mum, and the yiplu them el in a dam. But if nimtzis achar kapara, even though you found it as a balmum, you can argue, now it's better. Or you found it when she'avra shenasa, nah, that's a problem. Here at least, hoyel, it was lost during the kapara. And during the kapara, Danny, then it was of the age. Means that animal should have been brought. Now, what does lost mean? So the Rambam goes on halacha test. Someone stole it from you, b'shas kapara, and then it was returned. Eina mesa. You know why? It was not lost. The ganef knew where it was. You didn't know where it is. Elatira. You can argue, come on, it's so similar. It was lost from you. Here's where the Rambam says these words. Because leishamu mi Moshe Rabbeinu ela avuda. And we're speaking about something that's so beyond our ability to grasp. Why would you put it to die? So we say that we don't add any case other than exactly that which Moshe Rabbeinu spoke about. Avuda is not genuva. Ho yo ikar avedasa balayla. You lost it at night. Also, amazing. Because it was lost at a time, Yaakov, that you can't bring it. Look how we're limiting it. Halacha Yud. Now, what happens if it was lost from you, but the shepherd, it was not lost from the shepherd? You know what happened? I lost my shepherd. So the shepherd got lost. I don't know where the animal is. I don't know where the shepherd is, but it was not lost from the shepherd knows where the animal is. The shepherd doesn't know where the heck he is. He has to find his way back home. He doesn't have a GPS. That's not called lost. Or she'avdam in araya, but the owner knows where it is. You got your camera over there, and you see in your forest where it is. Eino mesa. That was not the case that Hashem told to Moshe. That's not called lost. El araya. Raya means raya until it gets blemished. You sell it, and the money goes to Keitz HaMizbeach. Oylas Tzibur leKeitz HaMizbeach. Even though it's your private carbon, it goes communal. Allah Yudal. Cholesh royos. Royos at sheyiplemu and v'yiplu the me'am l'nedavo. Allah Yudbeis. Choysabu l'mimenu min haroya. But you know what? Some other guy knew where it is. Va'achar. Another Yid knows. You know what? I don't know if it's a Yid, maybe even a non-Yid. Afilu b'soifer oilam harezu safek. But we already have to know. Once it's a suffix, it has to be Thomas. Because since you cannot bring a suffix chatos, therefore it has to be left tonight. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hoysa nechbeis achayda deles. It was hiding behind the door, or it was hiding under the stairwell. You ever had that? We had it once by us. One of our kids was missing. We went out of our minds, running on the streets. He was hiding in a pantry eating chocolate. Is that called lost? Yes, it's called loss. If you don't know where the animal is in our case, even though the animal is under your nose, you understand? You didn't see it because it's behind the door. That's called avuda. In other words, but what happens if it's out there in the field or out in the agam? Now, maybe someone is, in other words, it's in such an exposed place, it's possible someone saw it. Someone sees it. And now, yes, since by a suffix that Rambam paskins, we still put it to die, you dalit. You have to get running. Another din, guys. So let me ask you something. Maybe the owner died. So the rule is that every person, unless they are a goises, has a cheskas chai, because most people live. There's another side issue. Do you know that even though smicha is not ma'akev, since there's a mitzvah to do smicha, you cannot, and the smicha has to be done by the owner, not by a shliach. Achatos by a man, because women don't have to do smicha, cannot be sent to a shliach. So this whole thing is bechatos oif, shaykh to send it to a shliach, or a chatos of an animal from a woman. She'ena basmicha k'meshabiyano. No, it's this whole. But a man lachatchila, you will not accept a chatos by a shliach for you to need to even say this concept of becheska shukai. Now we're moving on. What about an asham? So we're going to learn the klal, guys. That will be the klal. We paskin that kol shebachatos tamos, ba'asham yira achi bu'emum. Even though asham, you can argue is the same thing, because an asham can also only come for a specific sin. Doesn't matter. It's different. The din of Moshe Misina is only by a chat. So let's go. Asham vadai shemeisu ba'alav, or shechipru ba'alav farvas, because they lost the animal. The owner separated another asham. They brought the other asham, and now you found it. We don't say it's left to die. Because of the klal, shekol shebechatos tamos. Asham yira ache ipul beimum v'ipul davam davam. Allah chatezva. Kol asham shenitak ledeiyam. Nitak means it was actually already given to the shepherd. It's out there in the pasture. Im hikrivay oila. Remember that we learned before. A asham can be male. Then a oila is male. So again, why don't you bring the animal for an oila? So the same gezeda. But if it was already given to pasture, if they wrongfully took it now, then it's kosher. Now, why do you even have to set it aside? Why does it have to be nitek? Because if you didn't get the kapara yet from the other one that you designated, then this animal cannot be used for an oil. Guys, an asham has to come from a male animal. But you separated in a keva. And you need to bring an asham, and now buy with the money a male animal. But if you brought an asham, in other words, you bought another animal, now you have this nekeva animal, the same thing is to a vlad. No, normally you don't have a vlad asham. A vlad asham is a male. But if you wrongfully designated the female animal for an asham, then the same din will apply. Never put to death. You wait until it gets blemished, and you buy oil on the kates on his bear.
Any animal that's not kosher for like what you're designating for? What if you designate? I don't know.
By other animals, any animal that can come at. Okay.
Why would you have to let it graze? It's not chal. It's not shayat. I don't understand.
I'm assuming that there's a difference between a male and a female and a deer. Halacha yudzai. Let's go to gender. Because an oila has to be a male. You designated the female and the older zachar. That's a chiddush here. Even the vlad yira. And what's the chiddush, Danny? Why don't we say that bring the child is a male? The answer is, why is the child kadosh? The kadush of the child comes from the mother. The mother cannot be offered as an oila. So we cannot allow the child to be greater than the mother. Halacha yutches. Avol hedyit. Now, when it comes to our carbon chatos, right, so many different chatois. So a chatos of the Kohen Mashiach is male, right? A chatos of a commoner is a kizbo yiseira. So a head he got the wrong gender, or a nasi a king who should designate a male designated a female, or the Kohen Mashiach that instead of him designating a par, he designated the par l'chatasa. In all of these cases, Danny, Namamish, what you said by the deer, here it's so far removed. Harei elo ein miskachois, like kedush saguf, and not even kedushas damim. And lefikach yimachru shaloi b'mum. But ayin daf chaf in the Sechtas Tmura, Danny, to know the reason behind it. In other words, we're limiting the dinim and tes zayin only to these cases. Halacha yutes. Maybe Yasham Taloi. Now Yasham Taloi means that there was something for which, if I would have done it, the vadai b'shoigeg, chaylev that I eat, God forbid b'shoigeg, I'm chayv chatas. If there is what's called this chazek yisura, that's essential here. In other words, there is definitely chaylev here, but there are two pieces of meat. One is chaylev, one is shumam. I ate one of them. I don't know which one is which. Until I find out, if I'll find out, I have to bring an Asham Tolu. Now, if I brought to Asham Tolu and later I found out that what I ate was chaylev, I have to bring a chatos. But what happens if I find out that what I ate was shuman prior to bringing the Asham Tolu? Maybe Asham Tolu, and prior to bringing it, you find out shalei chatam. Or prior to bringing it, you discover that you ate chaylev. So do we follow through with this carbon? So you didn't even do the shchita. Now you know this animal does not have to be brought. And people dabble in a dava. Guys, we don't call that a hegdish b'to'os. It's not hegdish b'to'os. Furthermore, even if you are, I don't even know that I did b'chalal anything wrong. I only found it out through Aiden. But so what? And later the Aiden became Zoymimim. Since for a sin, people really want to find a kapara, it's not hegdish b'to'os. You have to go through these steps. That's already the worst thing. Because now before the Zikas Adam, you know it was not correct. Now, on the other hand, if you found out after the Zikas Adam, you know how great it is that even the owners can eat it. Because the whole thing is, whoever's child is there, if they can just that since this is lachatchila brought out a suffix, you had the gemar kapara for the suffix, so you have a kosher card. Halacha chaf, but asham vada yenikein. Guys, how caught that what? Im actually nishchat moidoloi shloi chata. Then it's not even holy, guys. That's called hegdish betos. The aim by kedusha cloud. If you slaughtered it, you have to bury it. Even after the blood was sprinkled, in other words, guys, you should know that's the rule. By Asham Vadai, you are only magdishit almanas that you sinned. And now that we discovered you didn't sin, it's called Hegdish Tos. And Hegdish Tos is not Hegdish. Allah Chaval. Mishan is Chayv Asham Toloi. And this guy went ahead and he separated already two animals. Lachrayis, Mischaper Be'echad, Vasheni Yirat Shpurei Mun. The Yiplu Davel in a Dava. Why? Because we said, what's the rule? Kol Shabachatos Thomas, and I'll tell you more than even by a chatos, when you're lachatchila designated too, they never put to death. Halacha Chabes. Kol Hashom Shabatoira. Here we go, more details. Boyim, number one, every single Asham has to be within its second year, and don't bring a pilgus. That means 14 months until 24 months, and Uboyim bekasav shkolim. There's a unique din. You have to buy the animal for 2 shkolim. Chutz ma'asham mitzoyra and an el nazir, that they are b'nei shana, and there you can pay any amount, even less. Asham talui, but both from within the year or gedolim. Umepi ashmu alamdu she'einoi ba'ela bekasav shkolim. Now we got a problem. What happens if animals are very cheap? Who's lo elim, and you don't find an aisle for 2 slayim? En lo takana elayisha ache yukru v'yavu b'shnei slayim. Because shadei atoyek pid al doma v'nas like it's lachavdal hifresh hashamay. Now, while you were mafresh, guys, it was only worth a seller. But once you came to bring it, it was worth 2. Good. Kosher. When you bought it, it was not good. That's called dichui meikara. Dichui meikara nedochi. Vadayin lenira chiyasa shava shtayim. The moment it was worth shtayim, it was good. You can argue, hold on. When I was mafresh this animal as an asham, who does it belong to? It belongs to Hagdish. Doesn't matter. It was worth 2, and now that you come to bring this only with the seller, but it's not a permanent psul. It's not a permanent psul. Now, if the animal was designated, it was good. Then it got a mum, right? And then the mum goes away. Now, let's go. If you designated 2 coins, and you genius, you bought 2 animals. Shouldn't have done that. Each animal was worth 1 seller. But you know what? You got a good deal, Danny. Now one of the animals is now worth 2. The fact that you paid 1, in other words, I designated 2 coins. That one is brought. Now the other one, and like the El Nazir, and you bought Evehevi ben Shtayim, I'll give you an example, guys. A Nazir that became Tomei, remember, one of the 3 karbanis is a Sham Naziris, and he has to bring it after the 7 days of Tumah. He brought it within the 7 days of Tumah. That's an example. Puzzle. If you can ask the child to go outside until we finish learning, that will be helpful. And now the Taver Tzurasoi, the Yetzel Beis HaSeifa. Now, puzzle doesn't mean you burn it right away. You have to wait until it becomes overnighted. Zeh klal, guys. Kol ha-puzzle b'chatas puzzle ba'asham. Chutz min ha'asham she'shcharte shaloi l'shmoi, that even though the animal is loyal all ba'ala, but you can bring the animal at the first Mishnah Zvachim, and by a chatos, like by a Pesach, you can't even continue. Final halacha chav zayin, oilas nazir, v'oilas yoyledes, the oilas mitzoyra. We're going now to a korban oila. Sheshachatam b'nei shnei masar chodesh v'yoyim echad. They were beyond their age, or mechusrei zman baba olim, right? So the din will be they are kashedim. Danny, that's the cloud. Anything that's kosher ba'oilas nadava is b'di'evid kosher by a oilas chayva. Unlike the asham, and you know how much they're kosher? You're chayiv to bring the sach. Zaklau, kol she'ena paisel ba'oilas nadava, ena paisel ba'oilas chayva. Bain also ba'oilam, even if loy also, but you continue with the avoida and you bring the nesachim. Give all the to be continued.
Wow. Appropriate